The wind moved softly across the empty road, carrying with it the faint hiss of falling snow. The sky above was a pale, muted gray, the kind that promised more flakes before the day was over. On that quiet stretch of winter highway, the world seemed to hold its breath, wrapped in cold and silence, except for the soft clinks and scrapes coming from a man kneeling beside an old Mustang that he worked with steady hands, his breath rising in white clouds as he leaned over the large battery sitting in the snow. His jacket, sturdy and worn at the seams, was dusted with a thin layer of frost. The yellow gloves covering his hands were thick enough to block the cold but flexible enough to let him handle the tools with practiced ease. He moved with the calm efficiency of someone who had done this too many times to count. His boots sank slightly into the snow with every shift of his weight, leaving deep impressions that were already beginning to fill with fresh flakes. Just a few feet away, sitting on the front bumper of the Mustang, was the woman he'd stopped to help. She watched him with an expression that mixed curiosity, warmth, and something like admiration. Her posture was relaxed, her legs crossed at the knee, the tall boots hugging them perfectly. The long winter coat she wore wrapped around her like a perfectly tailored blanket, the color soft enough to blend beautifully with the muted landscape. A thick scarf was draped around her neck, and her hair, loose and glossy, framed her face like a flame against the snow. "Are you sure it's not too cold to be doing that out here?" she asked, her voice soft but carrying easily in the quiet air. He didn't look up at first. A faint smile tugged at the corner of his mouth, just barely visible beneath the stubble on his jaw. "Cold doesn't bother me much," he said, tightening one of the battery clamps. "Grew up with winters worse than this. Besides, leaving someone stranded in the middle of nowhere would bother me more." She laughed lightly, the sound warm enough to make the air around her feel less bitter. "Well, I appreciate it. I've been sitting here for almost an hour. I was starting to think the only living thing I'd see today was a snowplow." "You got lucky then," he replied, glancing up at her with a half smirk. "Snowplow drivers don't usually offer to fix batteries." "Do you?" she teased. He gave a small shrug, his shoulders lifting beneath layers of fabric. "Only for people who look like they're freezing." Her smile deepened at that, but she didn't argue. The cold didn't seem to touch her, not really, not with the way she sat so calmly, looking at him as if he were the most interesting thing in the entire winter landscape. Snowflakes settled on her hair and eyelashes, but she didn't brush them away. He returned to the battery, checking the cables, making sure everything was aligned. The Mustang behind her was a beauty, classic lines, deep green paint, chrome that still gleamed despite the weather. It wasn't the kind of car you expected to see stuck on a snowy roadside, but then again, she didn't look like the kind of woman who got stuck anywhere. She had an effortless sort of elegance, the kind that made even the falling snow seem like a decorative backdrop. "How long have you had this car?" he asked, nodding toward the Mustang without taking his eyes off his work. "Since last summer," she said. "My father passed it down to me. Well, sort of forced it on me, actually. He said it belonged to someone who'd take care of it." "And do you?" he asked. She lifted her shoulders in a graceful little shrug. "I try. But I don't know much about engines. Or batteries." She paused, her breath forming a small cloud. "Or winter, apparently." That earned a quiet chuckle from him. "Winter's not the problem. Batteries don't like the cold. Especially older ones." She tilted her head. "And you're an expert on older things?" "Cars," he corrected with another small smirk. "Mostly cars. Though I've been accused of being a bit old-fashioned myself." "I can see that," she said, her gaze drifting over him, his work boots, his heavy coat, the way he worked with quiet focus. "You look like someone who fixes things with his hands. The world doesn't make many of those anymore." He didn't know what to say to that, so he kept working. But her words lingered in the space between them, warm and strangely intimate. After a few more minutes, he tugged lightly on the cables and nodded. "All right," he said. "Try turning the key." She pushed herself off the bumper with a soft crunch of snow beneath her boots. Her coat swayed around her legs as she walked to the driver's side door. She slid into the seat, her breath fogging the cold interior. A moment later, she turned the key. The engine gave a low hum, then sputtered, then roared to life, its growl loud and warm in the stillness of the snowy afternoon. He exhaled in satisfaction, closing the hood with a solid thud. She stepped out of the car, her face lighting up with genuine relief. "You're a lifesaver," she said. He shook his head. "Just a guy with jumper cables." She stepped closer, her boots crunching softly in the snow. "Still," she said, her voice lowering just a little, "I'm glad it was you who came along." For a moment, the snowfall seemed to slow around them, drifting lazily through the space they shared. He cleared his throat, suddenly aware of how close she was and how warm her smile felt compared to the frozen world around them. "Well," he said, stuffing his gloves into his jacket pockets, "you're good to go now." She looked at him, the corner of her lip lifting thoughtfully. "Maybe I am," she replied, "but do you have anywhere you need to be? Because I'd feel terrible just driving off after you helped me." He raised an eyebrow, surprised. "Why?" "Because," she said with a soft, almost playful smile, "a cup of coffee seems like the least I can offer. There's a little cafe a mile down the road. Warm, cozy, good pie." He blinked once, then let a small smile spread across his face. "Pie, huh?" Hum. He glanced at the snow-covered road, then back at her. "All right," he said. "Lead the way." And with that, the two of them stepped into the drifting snow, her climbing into the Mustang, him heading to his truck, both unaware that a simple dead battery on a winter afternoon was about to change far more than just her travel plans.